And welcome everyone to the recaps of the La Plan Open. Before I show you my games, I wanted to do a little voiceover talking about the tournament and showing you the playing hall. So this is La Plan Open, the 5th edition. We are currently in the playing hall of the Masters group where Mendy and I played. Now there were a total of 3 groups. One was the amateur, second one that I don't remember the name of it, and the third one was the Masters group. Now in front of us we can see on the stage, on the podium, there were a total of 8 boards, and those boards were broadcasted, and I managed to play twice there, so not too bad, not too bad. Now a little bit about the competition. It was a classical time control, so 90 minutes for 40 moves and 30 seconds increment from move number 1, and after move 40 we got another 30 minutes, and again with 30 seconds increment. So quite a long game. Some games even lasted 6+ hours. Another fun fact about this tournament, that there was Sophia rule, and Sophia rule says that basically you cannot offer nor accept a draw before move 30 unless it's repetition. Now this is the outside of the playing hall. I was quite fascinated by the surroundings. Now overall, of course, the playing hall was comfortable, not too crowded, warm enough, so that was perfect. And that's pretty much it for this voiceover. Before I show you my games, I also want to share with you my unfiltered thoughts after the game. So enjoy and see you in the analysis. All right, guys. First round is in the books. Fortunately, I managed to get the W, so that's nice. I think I played well, but the opponent was very solid. Defended the position quite tenaciously, but I think I got a better position out of the opening, and I just managed to grind him out in the end game. But yeah, tough opponent, defended quite well, but yeah, it was good. I feel like it was good. It's good to be back, but we'll see. We'll see if I actually played well and if I actually knew the opening in this game. Now I'm headed back to our apartment, and we're gonna check. We're gonna go over it. But yeah, a win is a win. It's nice. First round in the books, as I said. Win, yeah, I'll take it. Now we're gonna check, and yeah, see you on the analysis board. All right, peace out. See you in a bit. Yep, these were some of my thoughts right after the game ended. And here we go. So this is a round 1 of La Plan Open. My opponent is Saint-Ray Jordan, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. And his rating is 2041 to be exact. And I'm playing white in this game. I started with the move knight f3. So before the tournament, I decided to basically play 1 or 2 openings just to make my life easier, just to make the preparation easier, just to be a little bit more consistent. My opponent responded with d5, g3, so I opted for what we call the Rati setup, knight f6, bishop g2, e6, castle, bishop e7. And now here white has quite a few moves. So of course the big main line is to go d4, d4, and then castle, and white can transpose into the Catalan opening with c4. There's also c4 here in this position, and after castle, again white has numerous options. Again, d4 transposes into the Catalan. White can go b3, which is quite a popular line. Also d3 is another way of playing this structure. Another way to approach this is by playing b3. This is what we call the double fianchetto. Of course, there are quite a few transpositions here. So for instance, if white goes c4 at any point, again, we transpose into the c4 lines and all that. Now, instead, I opted for the not so typical d3 move. So d3, basically the idea behind d3 is to go into some sort of a King's Indian defense reverse, which is basically the King's Indian attack. I tried this before, one game last year, and I was quite successful. I really enjoyed that structure in that game, so I figured I might as well try it again. This was one of the lines that I prepped for this tournament. Castle, and I played bishop f4, which is still normal theory. And now black has basically two main ways of playing this. So one is c5, that happened in the game, and the other one is b6, which is also quite a natural way of developing here. There are other like sidelines such as knight c6, which is also somewhat popular. Bishop d6 is also another way of playing here. But of course, the most natural way to continue is to play c5. And now I play this move a4. a4 is a good move. So the idea of a4 is quite deep, but basically the point here is that white wants to play, as I said, the King's Indian attack. And how does black normally respond to the King's Indian attack? Well, normally black tries its best to create some kind of a very fast counterattack on the queen side with like b5 and c4 and all that stuff, right? And so basically a4 plays around that strategy, right? So I'm not showing my cards just yet. So I'm not playing e4 immediately, not playing knight d2 immediately. Of course, my cards are quite obvious, even though I'm not showing them, but I am being prophylactic about this whole b5. And then, since you cannot really stop me from playing e4, I start first with this a4 and then knight b d2 or e4 immediately, or maybe knight c3. So my opponent played knight c6, which is again the most natural move, and then I played the move e4. So e4, it looks like a blunder or a sacrifice, and it is basically a straight up a pawn sacrifice. So let's try to understand the point here. So e4, d takes e4, d takes e4, and if black really wants to hold on to this extra pawn, black could just take on e4. So what's the compensation here? Well, white goes knight e5, bishop takes e5, knight e6, and then queen e2. So as you can see, the bishops are really, really powerful. So especially the bishop on g2 is really, really strong on the long diagonal. Bishop e5 is nicely centralized. And overall, the better coordinated pieces and black's lack of development and somewhat awkward pieces give white very, very good counterplay. My opponent instead took on d1 quite fast, took back, knight takes e4, and my opponent just blitzed these moves out, which was quite surprising. I even asked him after the game ended, like, were you aware of this line? Did you know this line? And he said no. He was just, basically, this is literally what he said. He was improvising. I'm like, okay, very impressive. And it just, I don't know. Okay, I haven't competed in 5 years, and it kind of like struck me as a surprise that even like 2,000 players nowadays know the line, or they can figure out the main move. So this is awesome in a way, but also terrifying. But yeah, so knight takes e4, knight e5, but of course this is still theory, so I also felt quite comfortable here. Knight e5, bishop takes e5, and bishop f6. Again, all these moves were blitzed out by the opponent, which is still, again, unbelievable considering he was just improvising. Now, bishop f6 was the only move. Why? So if black drops back to f6, I go knight c3. And after knight c3 or even a5, both moves are very, very strong and powerful. White has fantastic position. very, very good. Like this is almost borderline even winning. Like the compensation here is fantastic. Without the queens of the board, surprisingly, it's even harder for black to finish development. Now the bishop on g2 is just an absolute monster. For instance, you can try to defend with knight d7, but here white has a really nice tactics. I'm going to stop here for a second. Actually, I'm not even, just to make it a little bit more interesting for you guys, I'm not even gonna tell you the right move here. So if you know the right move, white to move and basically win. This is a small tactic. If you know the solution, write it in the comment section below. So white to move here and wins. All right, so but my opponent played the move bishop to f6, which is again the best move in this position. And now I went with f4. Again, keep in mind, this is still very much theory. Bishop takes e5, pawn takes e5, and then f5. f5 again, only move in order to protect the knight. The knight had otherwise no square. So of course you can go to g5, but after h4 I trap the knight and it is over. So f5, bishop takes e4, f takes e4, knight d2. So again, this is still very much theory, or at least I was aware of this. And then e3. e3, so this move e3 was not bad. So this was not a bad move. This was the move that I had in my file. But I'm not sure if this is the most accurate way of playing this. So probably the better way is to play b6. And why? I think it's quite, you know, self-explanatory, but apparently it wasn't so much for my opponent. Let's understand. So here I'm down a pawn. Of course, I'm getting the pawn back. And the goal here as white, of course, is to create this, you know, fantastic knight on d6. So that's a fantastic, beautiful outpost on d6, and then black is struggling a little bit with the bishop, right, with the bishop development. And so of course b6 tries to solve that issue immediately. So if I take on e4, and then I do take on e4, of course, now bishop b7, knight d6, and then bishop c6. And at least black here was able to solve the awkwardness of the bishop. Now, is white better here? I would say so, yes. Is it a large advantage? Absolutely not. There's like this small, I wouldn't say microscopic, but you might even argue that it's even microscopic. I would definitely say it's easier to play as white, but to convert it into a full point, that's definitely a challenge. So e3, but e3 is still like relatively okay, but again, this is probably somewhat, this is what I would call the first inaccuracy, but this is should be still fine. Knight c4, e2, rook d2, and this is where basically my line ended. This is all I knew about this, and of course I knew, like, okay, I go knight d6 and I have good gameplay on the queen side. b6, knight d6. And so I think this is where the first true, I would say, mistake happened in the game. And again, black has to solve the problem of the bishop, right? So bishop on c8 is really awkward. And also, if you can't solve the bishop's problem, then you cannot connect the rooks either, which is also a concern. So black should play something like bishop d7, which is quite interesting that there is still a game here. So a few months back, French international master had a game like this as white, and his opponent played bishop d7, and then the game continued with rook e2, bishop c6, rook f2, rook takes, king takes, and white somehow managed to outplay or grind him out in the endgame. Of course, there was like 300 rating difference between the two, but this is, objectively speaking, again, should be a draw with precise defense. Of course, it's not easy for black, but it should be okay. But again, like bishop d7 makes a lot of sense, of course. I mean, black has to develop. Now my opponent played rook f3, which was a little bit weird. I didn't really understand like why, what was the point. Of course, technically you might want to play something like rook e3 to attack my pawn, but I want to take on e2 anyway, so that's not really a you know, the point, I guess. And so if not rook e3, because I played rook e2, then why are we playing rook f3? Again, what is the problem? What is my real problem from black's perspective? What is the real problem here? And of course the bishop, so he should have you know, taken care of the bishop. I took on e2, bishop a6, so maybe he was like relying on this developing / tempo move, but bishop a6, weirdly enough, it doesn't do anything because I have c4, and c4 kills the bishop. I mean, technically the knight on d6 kills the bishop, and again the same thing would have happened in this position, right? If black plays bishop a6, it doesn't change anything because I can still go c4. And so here, after bishop a6, c4, now the game is quite problematic for black. It's actually a clear advantage because you did not solve the bishop's situation. Now it looks like it's solved, or it's been solved, but the bishop on a6 is just borderline terrible. So he went with rook d3, I went with a5. So here a5, I already calculated, I believe, the winning line and the winning move. So he went with rook b3. Rook b3 was another mistake. For whatever reason, I expected this move from him. I kind of like knew that this is coming. I expected this. This is not a great move, but it's also quite difficult to recommend a good move, because once I open the a file for my rook, then I'm gonna be able to create the pin or you know, push or pressure the a file even more. That's just suffering. So he played rook b3. Again, it's hard to recommend anything better. There is probably a better move, but again, it was tough already. And then I took on b6. So there are two ways, of course, to take back. One is with the pawn. That's what my opponent picked, a takes b6, and the other move is rook takes b6. Rook takes b6 is not that much better, to be honest. It's maybe even worse because I have rook a5. Now white has quite a few targets to attack. So the a7 pawn is a weakness, c5 is a weakness, e6 is a weakness, bishop on a6 is a weakness. So all of these are weaknesses. And surprisingly, even the king on g8 is a weakness. Why? Because there is no escape route, right? So I cannot go to f7. So whenever I invade the back rank, you're in trouble as well. So let's say you play rook c6, I go b3, I double the rooks, use the rook lift, and it's basically, you know, that's pretty much all she wrote. Now, opponent took back, and this was the really critical move here that I believe that my opponent missed, and maybe he was relying on this position. You know, he was like, okay, if I can play bishop b7, so we gotta be really careful here. If black can play something like bishop b7, then maybe it is at the end of the day it's playable, right? Because I managed to trade off the active rook, the bishop gets on the long diagonal finally, and so it's actually okay. Now here again, let's play the same game. So of course now you don't have to write into the comments because I'm going to show you, because I did find the move. I believe the very best move here, but you can stop the video here and try to find you know, the best move here for white. So of course stop here for a second and try to find white's best move here. Of course, and now rook a3. If you found it, it's really good work. So rook a3 is a really nice move. I was quite proud of this move. Not like it's like super difficult, but I had to see this pretty much here, right? So when I played c4, I saw this line already, this rook a3. This is only like 3 or 4 moves, so it's not like, oh wow, it's unbelievably impressive. It's nothing like that, of course. But rook a3 rook a3 is indeed a great move. You might be scared that like, oh yeah, but you know, like less pieces, it's even harder to convert. But keep in mind, I have 2 pieces, you have 2 pieces, but my 2 pieces are absolutely phenomenal, and yours two are just absolute garbage. So what's the point? So I'm forcing this trade. I'm getting rid of your only attacker on b3, and I'm still, by getting rid of that b3 rook and closing the a file / opening the b file, your pieces remain really awkward. If you ignore the trade, or you say no to it, let's say you play something like rook b4, I can go b3 even, and then rook a2 again double, or I have so many, maybe not maybe b3 is incorrect, right? b3 is maybe incorrect because I have this. This feels also very questionable. Yeah, I can still probably take here, takes back rook a2. This feels also very bad, like rook a7, rook c7. This feels also quite over, but I'm sure there are other ways to play this. I can play maybe rook e1 is probably even better, so the rook remains protected. So not even bishop b7 is an option, because bishop b7 now I can just take it simply, right? And so now you can't stop the doubling on the a file. So yeah, pretty much rook takes a3 was the game over, and after b takes a3. And I remember in this game, or at least that's how I kind of, you know, saw it. After rook a3 and takes, my opponent was like, okay, I don't even understand rook a3, like what's the point? And then he played rook f8 again quite quickly, and after rook b2, then he started shaking his head, realizing that okay, this is a big problem. So if you now try to solve the bishop situation with bishop c8, I go rook b2, and you can't really protect the pawn. So you can't play rook c8 because the bishop is hanging. You can't play bishop d7 either because I take, and again, as I mentioned, right, the king is a big problem as well. So you can't leave the back rank either because rook takes a3 met by rook b8. So that's also a big trouble. And if you defend it like this, I have a4. a4, next move a5, and I'm winning the pawn. You can't get rid of this pin. So he played rook f8. Again, it was probably, you know, even worse, but he doesn't really have a good move, because even if you start with rook b8, it doesn't change a thing, because rook b2, and again, the knight is just so dominating that it just ends the game, right? And again, you can't do anything, because next move is going to be a4, and then the move after is going to be a5. These are going to be my next move no matter what you do, right? So I basically pre-move it. So, okay, I mean, he went rook f8, but after rook b2, again, it's game over pretty much again. If you go back to b8, I go a4, that's basically game over. So he played bishop c8, rook takes b6, bishop d7, rook b7. I mean, he lost one of the most important pawns in the position, so now I have an outside pass pawn. Also, the c5 is still very weak. The bishop, surprisingly, is still very awkward on d7, so it's still going to be a target. And again, let's not forget, the king is still very weak, so you cannot even activate the rook. If you could play something like rook f3 maybe, and just to be a little bit annoying, you can't even do that, because I have rook c8 always, right? So the rest of the game didn't really, didn't really cause me any issues. So I'm just going to show you the rest of the moves. h4, rook knight e4, rook f5, knight takes c5, bishop c2, knight takes e6, rook takes e5. I could have taken on g7 with the rook. I was maybe a little bit overcomplicating it with the move knight e4, but I felt like, you know, that's the safest option. I just wanted to really make sure. Bishop a4, I start pushing my passed pawn, makes sense. h4, he even missed knight f3, not that it mattered, but still. Rook e3, knight takes h4, rook takes a3, knight f5, and then he resigned here because, okay, I'm already up 2 pawns, and the g pawn is also falling because, let's say if you go g6 or something like that, I go rook g7, and yeah, that's pretty much game. All right, so yeah, I mean the technique. I felt like during the game, I felt it was shakier a little bit, but it was it was fine, to be honest. I think I played all right. The rook a3 was a very critical move. Knowing the opening really helped me, and then again, I think I just somewhat outplayed him. I guess he made some inaccurate decisions, and yeah, I was able to outplay him. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the first round of the La Plan Open. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something from it, at least. Don't forget to, comment your solution to the first question in the game, that small little tactic. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you liked it. I hope you learned something from it. Let me know what you want to see from the next game. If you want this longer, you want this shorter, tell me what you think and what you want to see. So yeah, this was round one. Decent start. Yeah, 1 out of 1. And yeah, that's it. So see you guys in the second game. Peace out.